Stay Live with Mickey and Willie.
Hey, welcome strangers to another episode of This Strange Life. I'm Mickey, the conduit between the freaks and the geeks, and I've got alongside me, what's he called? James. I'll let you introduce yourself because you don't like me calling you a novelist, really, do you? But I mean, that's what you are, right?
Well, not these days. No, it's a bit of a dirty word. But we have three novelists today. Myself, James Newman, writes books, and we have Mr. John Burdett, author of the Sanchai series of crime novels. There were 5, weren't there? Six.
And it's Sanchai.
Sanchai.
So Sanchai's the protagonist, is he?
He's like a Luk Krung detective.
That's
Which
right.
for our sort of Bangkok listeners is half Thai, half Farang.
His
right?
dad
Yeah.
was a Vietnam vet, a white Vietnam vet, and his mum worked in a bar.
And he's
So very,
What a start in life.
not an unusual combination.
No.
But he's a totally fair. Well, I'd say he's a totally fair kind of police officer, isn't he? Compared with most in the city, and that's kind of his charming.
He's fair. He's very connected to the internet. He's also a devout Buddhist. He's a complete man.
He is.
Wow.
And we also have Christopher G. Moore in the room as well, who has written. I'm going to get this wrong as well. I'm going to say 19.
20. I thought it was 27, but that was just
in the series, in the Vincent Calvino series.
Okay, right.
This is a little bit like a
15.
country auction. Can you give me 16?
16.
Yeah, there we go.
16 novels, and that's spanning since 92 or 93 or something.
92.
92
Yeah.
with Spirit House, right?
Right. Spirit House was the first one that came out in 92, and 2016 Jumpers, the number 16th, came out.
And Chris, you've been in Bangkok since a bit before that, actually. I think the mid-80s.
I've been here since Joseph Conrad stayed at the Oriental.
But did he actually stay there? He did, actually, didn't he?
He did,
malaria or something.
but it was a guest house then.
Right.
It wasn't the Oriental that you would think of today.
Somerset Maugham danced there in the ballroom.
They have the Somerset Maugham suite there. Do they have a Conrad?
They have a Conrad
Right.
suite. They have a Somerset Maugham suite. They have a Gore Vidal suite.
Wow.
And
Okay.
it's like $1,000 a night.
So Mandarin Oriental Hotel, if you're listening, we are looking for sponsors.
Yeah. And venues.
And sweets.
And suites. 'Cause we're in, what building are we in?
RSU Tower.
RSU Tower today.
Yes.
Our normal venue has slipped out from beneath us.
Yeah, so I think we've just got to give a quick nod to this place where we are today. It's very formal. We're in an office kind of meeting room environment, which is not what we're used to on this podcast. We're used to a kind of quaint little room above a bar.
Yep.
Which is really nice and full of character, and everybody loves going there. It's a real sort of cool place to do a podcast, and this is a little bit sanitary, would we say, gents?
Very clean, yes.
I would say it's a little bit like a deprogramming chamber for Scientologists.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing that you can't see, actually, but that's kind of hypnotic in a way. I feel like I'm maybe subject to some kind of MK Ultra programming.
It's not very Bangkok for us old timers, anyway.
John, did you sign the release form on your way in?
I did actually have to sign my name for the bill, actually, but I don't know. I didn't check the small print, guys. Actually,
So the e-meters get wheeled in a bit, I think, about halfway through.
are they those things that you have to hold in your hand and they take?
They're like, I mean, Scientology, I mean, the idea is that you become clear, right? Once you're answered.
Clear.
You're
Right, yeah.
asked a number of questions, and the idea is that if the question doesn't invoke a reaction, then you're clear on that particular subject.
Right.
So what it is,
yeah.
it's like a lie detector machine, an e-meter machine.
And also a way of getting your deepest secrets out of you, right? And then holding
all
them
held on
back.
record.
You
It's
can
a bit
be
like Facebook.
blackmailed
you know,
thereafter for the rest of your life.
That's right,
Yeah.
John. Yeah,
But
That's right.
But you do get free tickets to Tom Cruise films.
Yes.
Did you see Tom Cruise at that Scientology fest where he had that big kind of medal on? He was like saluting LRH, you know, here's to LRH. It was just so...
He's changed, though, hasn't he? He's cooled off on Scientology.
Well, I'm not surprised after all the scandals.
Yeah, that's right.
Jesus Christ, I'm not offending anyone here. Jesus Christ, did I say?
Oh no, that's the Lord's name.
Oh, okay. That's only $5 then instead of 10. But I must just say, guys, I feel really lucky because in doing this podcast, I get to meet some really cool people, and whenever else in my life would I get to sort of sit next to three just really cool, great novelists and, you know, pioneer. Well, you said not pioneers, James, Buccaneers, right?
Just wandered down Soy Cowboy.
Of the scene. Yeah. But I wouldn't get you for an hour and sober, right? I might get some dribbling, some late hours dribbling into your sort of vodka glass or something.
Well, there might be a background noise, put it that way.
Sadly, this is as coherent as you'll ever get us.
No, so this is great. And Christopher, I know did you recently do the Bangkok podcast?
Yes, I did that.
Yeah, I listened to it. It was really great. But that leads us on to something, actually, that we're going to talk about. How do we think, like, media's changing in the way people are consuming media? Because I'm a podcast junkie, obviously, and I do one. But are you guys into podcasts now? Do you listen to them?
Not as much as I used to. I used to be crazy for podcasts, but now, to be honest, and to be lazy, there's so much on YouTube. You can get access to just about anything you want now.
Yes.
And it's just amazing, and it takes up a huge amount of time. I went from the First World War to Mike Tyson yesterday, thoroughly investigated both, and it took the whole day.
What a crazy link, First World War to Mike Tyson.
Yeah,
and that was all sort of the suggested videos on the right-hand side. They lead you down some rabbit holes, don't they?
That's exactly what happened, yeah.
Yes, I think that's part of what's happened is our attention gets split into these little baby universes of knowledge. You know, suddenly we go with the very best intention just to check out the latest research on cholesterol. And before we know it, we're somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, near an oasis where people don't have enough water to drink. And we think, my God,
how did I get here?
How did I get here? And now I'm going to take the next link, and I'm looking at the malaria statistics of Bulgaria. I didn't even know Bulgaria had malaria, but apparently they do. And so you can spend the whole day, and at the end of the day, you do a summary of what you learned. And it's basically a blank. It's a lot of little bits and pieces. You have a Frankenstein monster of an encyclopedia that makes no fucking sense.
Well, you think I don't need to remember that. I can just watch it again when I need to know more. You know?
Information and knowledge.
Yeah.
What is the difference between information and knowledge? And is the malaria statistics are those statistics in Bulgaria? Is that information or is that knowledge?
Knowledge is really what you do when you manipulate information to draw inferences from it. What you're looking at is the data. The big data is raw, so you don't really know what the implications are. And what you want to do is to say, look, here are some interesting correlations. The people who have flu symptoms seem to have recently been on the internet Googling Detroit. We don't know why, but there's a correlation between Googling Detroit and flu statistics in Birmingham, England. How did that ever happen?
Knowledge traditionally is understanding. In other words, it's experience. The old English word understanding means you've got underneath the subject and it's become part of your experience. It's a completely different thing from collecting data.
And if that's used, it's wisdom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's information, knowledge, and wisdom.
Wisdom, you're quite right. And wisdom
Application
is the traditional name for religious experience.
The problem with wisdom is it's way down the road of knowledge, and most people get run over by the bus before they get anywhere near the end of that road. Yeah. And it's just, you see the splatter marks all around you.
That's right.
That's interesting. And in terms of this, is it knowledge or is it information? I used to work with a guy that really swore to me that it wasn't what you know, It was knowing where to find the information. So he said you can have everything in your head, you know, but it's really knowing, and I'm talking about my job now, I'm an architect, so it's like building standards and all that kind of thing, and construction standards. And he said, you know, you don't have to have it all in your head, you just need to know where to find it. So I guess
disagree. I disagree. I mean, I've had these arguments with people where they'd be on their computer Googling it whilst I'm using my knowledge, you know.
No, I agree with you, actually, James.
I think the process of digesting information in and it depends what media form you digest that information. I do think that if you're digesting that information through literature or through a book, it has a much better chance of becoming knowledge as opposed to a TV show or even a podcast. And all this information which I do digest, especially online now, and I do it all the time, and I often go to sleep listening to a YouTube program or a podcast on a subject I'm particularly interested in, thinking it'd be like the old linguaphone method, you know, where you would learn in your sleep. Yeah. And I would have these bizarre dreams where the subject's there, but it's being kind of taken apart and it's being erased by my mind. I think that when you're sleeping, there's like this neural cleansing that goes on where you remove bits of information that you don't need.
Definitely, yeah.
So I think when you have those bizarre dreams about mosquito counts in Bulgaria and stuff like that, it's your brain's way of saying, hang on, we don't actually need this. You know, it's not. You're not going to use it for anything. So the knowledge is the application of wisdom. Is the application of knowledge. It's using knowledge you've learned. And then it becomes...
there's a lot of things that we no longer need that we used to need. Nobody needs to learn to spell anymore because it's all there on the computer. And nobody does. And you can't justify Anglo-Saxon spelling at all. So if you're an English speaker, it's a good thing because you've got the spelling there at your fingertips, but understanding something which has some depth to it, it doesn't help you understand Hamlet or King Lear or anything like that. So the divide in many ways has become much clearer and much more specific between information and knowledge, I would say.
Yeah, I did this, my most recent book, Rooms. So I'm looking at the long trajectory of how we evolved knowledge and how we used it. And I think like hunter-gatherers, they didn't stop and say, there's a berry, I better Google to see if that is edible or not. There is a track, I don't know what that is, I better take a photograph of it. In other words, we've become cognitively lazy. At the same time, we think, okay, we have supplemented our knowledge base because we can find out things that would be hard to find out otherwise. But in some ways, that's a slippery slope because the more cognitively lazy you become, the more reliant you are on a knowledge base that is not residing in your experience, but residing in the experience of others, and you're relying on that experience as a surrogate. And we never did that as a species. We relied, and we had to rely to be self-sufficient on our knowledge. And if we were mistaken, we paid a high price.
And that knowledge base is now very easily manipulated. If we've seen in the American elections, if you want to change reality, you just you reprogram. Yeah, you reprogram your computer and send it out. That's it.
That's interesting. That to me is really interesting. That the whole we're storing everything in the cloud now, aren't we? And if the power went out, even just for a few weeks or a few days, there'd be turmoil, wouldn't there?
It would either be a miracle or a disaster.
It'd be like the burning of the books in Alexandria.
Right, yeah, we'd either thrive, or capitulate. But we'd probably feel some kind of release, wouldn't we?
But it's when all the infrastructure, as it is now,
that's right.
Going back to your
ATMs.
How would you pay for anything?
I mean, when the hospitals are running from the cloud, when the smart fridges and the cars are running from the cloud, we've only got so much time before we can escape this potential reality.
But I do feel like we're in but I do feel like we're in a great place in Thailand, and I know I've spoken about it on this podcast before. But up country, where my wife's mum, where my wife's mum lives, they still use ox in the field.
That's true, actually.
They still barter. They still have a bartering economy. Like somebody will bring some mangoes round to my mother-in-law's house, and she'll give them some bananas, and so it's still. I think if the power did go out, I think America would be, excuse my language, fucked. But I think here I'd just go up country for a couple of weeks.
Isan would be thriving.
Yeah.
They'd have the food.
Yeah,
they have it. The bullocks. They'd have everything.
exactly. I think we're in a good spot here for the apocalypse.
They're more anti-fragile, to use a current term.
Definitely.
Is our fragility. We live in a city, Bangkok, of about 12 million people. Cut the power here, wait 6 weeks, and see how many people are left. People could not survive. If you can't...
Once the looting's done.
There's no aircon, there's no refrigeration, the transportation system stalls, you can't get food in, you can't get water, you're going to have epidemics, you can't flush the toilets, and so as a result, you suddenly find a whole city that would collapse.
The people who had lived the most untouched lifestyles up in the top floor of the penthouse suite, and who rely on getting down each day in the lift to their driver in the limousine, and occasionally travel by SkyTrain if they feel like really, roughing it with the locals. These are the guys most vulnerable, and this is what...
But I mean, you talk about vulnerability and panic. You only have to look at the smog today in the last few days. I tried to buy an air purifier. They're sold out all over the city. You cannot buy an air purifier anywhere. This is panic.
It's cheaper to die, isn't it? And the masks as well. It's difficult.
You know those old cartoons of the guy with the trench coat. You want to buy a watch. Now it's now it's a mask. You want a mask? You want to breathe? I'll make you a bargain on this. And you come back to my place, and I've got air purifiers.
Someone needs to do a meme on that and stick it on Facebook. That's a good one, Chris.
Hey, mister, you fancy living?
Yeah. But someone said to me, and you guys know the history of Bangkok better than me, that actually the smog's pretty much like this every year. It's just more...
I disagree. I've never known it that's bad. I've been here 18 years, and there's always been smog, but nothing like this. I mean, you get a headache, you get a sore throat. I'm pretty resilient. I was brought up in the pea supers in London, but I've never experienced anything like this.
Oh, right. Okay. So... Yeah.
I mean, it was bad here in the 90s until they basically banned leaded fuel. Mm-hmm. That was a huge, significant improvement to the air quality. But the result is that with many more cars in the city, a lot more construction, coal-fired generator plants, seasonal burning, all of that adds to the fine, small particles that you can't see. We look at a haze and we go, "Whoa, wow, that's dangerous." When it's not hazy, it doesn't mean it's not.
Yeah,
it's that it's safe.
PM 2.5s or whatever.
It's that is the particle micro measurement. It is like 1/3 of the diameter of a human hair, and when that gets into your lungs, you can have some very serious problems.
But the big problem is the diesel, though, isn't it? I mean, they had exactly the same thing in Paris, and they just banned diesel, and they've got a sort of a vendetta against diesel. Yeah. And it has helped a bit in Paris. So I guess,
That's crazy. For years, we were all urged to buy diesel, weren't we? And then suddenly we're all getting... I just bought a petrol car, actually. But anyway. Yeah. But yeah, I wonder if that would help over time, the banning of diesel. I mean...
I don't know. They're using alternate number plates in Paris, and that seemed to help quite a bit. Ultimately, it's the private car and the truck that's the villains of the piece.
Well, and it's the thing is it's the larger economic system that relies on cheap transportation to deliver services and goods. Yeah. Diesel is cheap, and it's not. Diesel is just not one thing. There is an international standard for what goes in diesel. The Thai standard is below international. So it is a dirtier diesel that's being burnt at the moment, and that's causing the problem. And since diesel has been subsidized, about 38% of the new vehicles that are coming in are diesel. Oh, really? And then you've got all of the old buses in Bangkok, and you look at these black clouds that they're sending into the atmosphere, and then you think, I wonder if anyone's aware of what's causing some of this problem.
Yeah. They're the only buses that have the windows open as well, because then they're free too.
What's it actually doing? I mean, I go running every day at Benja Kitty Park around the thing, and someone said to me, you basically may as well not go.
You're killing yourself because you're running straight into that pollution, like in your.
You take it deeper into your lungs.
It makes me feel good, though. Endorphins, but
it's like jogging in a coal mine.
So the one thing that I do every day that gives me some semblance of psychological well-being.
Stop doing that.
I've got to stop doing that now. It's bad for me. Holy shit! If I didn't have my run, I'll tell you what. There's Mickey before a run and Mickey after a run, and the one before a run is not
get a Xiaomi treadmill with a Xiaomi air purifier in the apartment. And,
good one, yeah.
You can rest assured knowing you're making the Chinese rich whilst you're...
We've started shutting our windows at night, but it's just as bad inside, isn't it? If you don't have an air purifier. But yeah, okay, I might try that. Xiaomi. Is that a good brand, is it, James?
I was.
It comes with a Chinese social ranking credit system attached.
Yeah, you get like a plus 20 score the moment you purchase it. And if you're listening to Xiaomi, we are looking for sponsorship.
This is good. I'll see what you're doing here, James. I like it. Yeah. So the Chinese. Yeah, I mean that's crazy. So if you buy a Xiaomi, you can get like some sort of business class tickets or something, or get a quicker train or something.
You can get your children into basic schooling.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So you guys, James, I know you've been in Bangkok 18 years. Christopher, how long have you been in Bangkok?
I came in 1988 to live.
Holy crap, so that's 31 years.
Something like that, yeah.
And you,
18 years, I mean.
Holy shit. Right,
2001.
okay. So so I'm 6 years, so I'm a relative Bangkok baby. So how's it changed over the years? I mean, from I think we sort of said earlier, from sweatshops to high rises, and from swamps to shopping malls.
I would say the money that's poured into the real estate in downtown Bangkok is just amazing. It was a relatively primitive, old-style Asian city when I came 18 years ago. But now, especially with the helix buildings and stuff like that, the money that must be poured into real estate is just amazing. And nobody seems to explain where it's coming from. One rumor was that Goldman Sachs was laundering money from Mexico and pouring it into to the real estate here. Another is that the Chinese community have enormous faith on where the place is going. I think both of those things are probably true. But if you walk through the helix, I do not see people buying those incredibly expensive goods, but the shops are open all the time.
Where's the helix?
Phrom Phong station. It's opposite the Emporium at Phrom Phong.
Okay,
It suddenly grew while I was away.
M-Quartier.
That's it. That's the place.
Okay, yes. Yeah, and the Embassy shopping mall as well, which is down near Chitlom, where it's all just Prada and I never see anybody in there.
They're not retail units; they're showrooms. It's just to show what you can aspire to.
You've got to spare $100,000. You can buy a lovely loudspeaker in there.
Yeah,
but I mean, what the kids who have that amount of money, I mean, normally, it's children that are kind of fall into this.
These are the Lamborghini kids.
The Lamborghini kids.
There's always a Lamborghini outside, isn't there? Parked outside.
But these shopping malls are like the catalogue. Do you remember the catalogue you used to get at home, and then you'd see what you wanted, and you'd go to the actual shop and buy it? I mean, these kids, they go to Europe and they go and buy Prada or whatever, but they can just have a little look in the stores and get an idea.
Okay. That makes sense.
These are nice stores. They're very pleasant to walk through, and especially with the circular ramp in the Helix building, and some fantastic restaurants. A huge selections of restaurants at the top. But if you look at the retail shops underneath, like the expensive music outlets, never anybody even inside looking. Amazing.
Oh, those places that sells like boutiques or turntables and
that's right.
speakers and stuff. There's nobody ever.
There's only like 3 items for sale in the entire shop.
Yeah, that's right. But you can have your initials on it.
I came in 1988. I think Bangkok was a very different kind of place. The world was a different place.
Sure.
We have to take into account the interconnectedness that we have now. In 1988, you had to have a special license from the government to have a fax machine. Everyone had dial phones. It was unbelievably expensive to phone overseas. If you wanted to know what was going on in the world, every Friday or Saturday morning at the Foreign Correspondents Club, there would be a reel of the American news that people would come and see what had happened the previous week. In other words, we lived in a far more isolated Bangkok. It's hard to imagine how fundamentally social media and the internet has leveled things in the world. And we got all these high rises here, but it's not just Bangkok. It's you look at Shanghai, you look at Hong Kong. I remember going to Hong Kong in 1983 for the first time and seeing the city then. And you look at Hong Kong now, it's unrecognizable.
It's unrecognizable.
From 1983, just like this place is. And Shanghai, the same thing. So it's not just Bangkok that has grown up. I was almost going to say flowered, but I'm not certain if this is the appropriate metaphor in this situation. It's more like mushrooms that have come up.
Thailand was a fantastic country in those days. I didn't live here, but we used to come here from Bangkok, from Hong Kong on R&R. I was working in Hong Kong. And what a relief. You got out of the plane in Bangkok, so relaxed, that sort of Thai Buddhist easygoing attitude, and you could
the
go,
smiles.
The smiles, and you got the train. We used to get the train up to Chiang Mai, overnight train, first class, fantastic bunks, and you used to get out in this country town where you could go and do a trip in the jungle on an elephant, and you really felt that it was a real thing somehow.
Adventure.
You didn't feel that a million people had done it before you. It was, obviously it wasn't new, but it was seriously good fun.
It was. And the expat population, the foreigners who were living here, came from a different background. You didn't have digital nomads in 1988. No one would have known what you were talking about. You didn't have people who came here necessarily for a job. They were adventurers, there were layabouts, there were diplomats, there were journalists. There were all kinds. Well, most of them were criminals. But that aside, it wasn't like people were talking about their middle-class office jobs.
Exactly.
They were talking about, I've been in this war zone, I got shot at over this place here, I went up there and almost got eaten by crocodiles. And when I was in the war, this happened, and this happened to my friend, etc. So you were in an environment which was rich with individual experience and stories about experience. That has changed because people now have outsourced their experience through social media. You want an experience? You don't want to get dirty and it might be dangerous, so watch it on YouTube.
Well, that's the shame. Yeah. That's the shame of it. It was genuinely different. I mean, you could do a trip. I did my first trip in the hills above Chiang Mai, and part of the trip was to stop off at an opium village. That's what they did. They had these guys with submachine guns walking around this field because they were protecting it. But they didn't mind some foreigners coming in saying hello. You stayed overnight in a little hut, and we stayed with this wonderful, really beautiful old Thai couple. And, just about like 7, 8 in the evening, he got out the opium pipe and the opium and passed it around. And I'd never touched the stuff before. I laid back and looked at this roof and thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life.
There was a sense you could just totally get off grid back then as well.
Exactly what I'm saying.
You would, you'd say goodbye, to your loved ones, to your family, to your parents or whatever in the UK, and then you just disappear. You wouldn't speak to them.
Send a postcard,
6 months or a year or something. And nowadays you see these guys who have gone missing for like 12 hours, and there's like a missing persons campaign all over social media. It's like we spoke to him yesterday, but he hasn't sent us a message since.
Yeah.
He's in a brothel.
Just let the kid have, just give him a weekend.
Or if your Apple Watch broadcasts fall, and then you've alerted the whole of the security forces.
And you used to be able to go through immigration, I'd imagine, in Thailand, and there was no real record. There'd just be a bunch of paper in an office. And
That's right.
You know, no one really know where you were. And there's a certain glamour to that, I
You
think.
could
that
always
we've
bribe
lost.
someone if you got into trouble anyway.
You know, one of the things I was doing with the Calvino books is really chronicling over about a 25-year period these kind of changes. Because when they happen gradually. It's not like this stuff just happened in the last 6 months. It's happened over a period of time. And at some point, you start to notice this is a serious change of direction. We've shifted emphasis. The people who are here now are different in terms of their worldview than the people who were here before. And so what you start to understand is that shift, that transition, we've lived through it. We're now on the other side of something that we're trying to comprehend.
That's interesting.
What's dying out now? We were speaking about this briefly before at lunch, but there used to be two types of we used to call them travellers, but tourists, I guess you would call. You'd have like the local guys working here, like involved in the bar girl industry and the kind of who you'd label as like sexpats, and then there would be like the backpacker kind of traveller. And now there's just such a enormous rainbow of different types of people here. You got like fashion models, you've got TV guys, photographers, lots of school teachers and different types of school teachers, international and so forth.
A lot of writers,
bloggers, podcasters.
You've got time-out guides to Bangkok, my God.
And you have mass tourism.
That's
30
right.
years ago, there was not mass tourism. Right. I mean, to come here, you had to make an effort. Yeah. And there were not people to hold your hands. You were not hanging out in internet cafes, talking to your friends back home and talking to your mom on Skype. When you came here, you were here. And you were cut off from the outside world for all practical purposes.
And that was part of the fun. I mean, that was sort of why you did it in a way.
Exactly.
Especially if you worked in Hong Kong, the last thing you wanted was to be connected. You wanted to relax, be in a completely different atmosphere.
Yeah, you had your Lonely Planet and your little phrase book. I came first in 2001 backpacking.
Cassettes
and
as well. I had cassettes and a Sony Walkman.
Did you?
Yeah, I did
couldn't
too.
cap.
Yeah. I still haven't got it.
Now it's just so easy. There's devices on your phone now where you just say what you want to say and hand it to
the
them.
maps as well. I mean, the fun thing about travelling and going somewhere new is kind of getting a bit lost.
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out a city,
Yes.
and how to navigate your way around a city. I mean, it's no fun if you've got Google Maps.
Yeah.
But see, this is, I think, part of the new psychology is there is a huge fear of getting lost. We used to get lost, and by being lost, you learned something fundamental about yourself and how you can survive, how you adapt. And sometimes getting lost is a good thing. You discover things you would never have found. Now everyone is on a GPS. And the great fear is, my God, my GPS isn't working. Yeah. I could get lost.
Yeah, people have nervous breakdowns just thinking about stuff like that.
That's how scientific discoveries are made, by scientists getting lost and going off track and thinking ways they shouldn't.
It's how novels are written.
It's how novels are written.
That's really true, actually. That nobody takes like risks anymore, do they? And like just goes off the beaten track and says, okay, what will be, and wherever we end up, let's just go in that direction. There's none of that now, really.
Well, what happens is you'll find this story. They discovered the body. It was half eaten by wolves. Yeah. This is what happens when you get lost.
Yeah, when you go off the beaten track. Yeah, there's all those horror stories, isn't there?
Well, there was that lady down in Koh Tao. I mean, in Death Island, if we can call it that here.
Oh, those half-eat.
She got eaten by a monitor lizard, and these guys they were sitting on the beach, and they saw this lizard crawling up into the jungle and coming back down, with body parts in its jaws or whatever. And they walked up there and they found this woman who had apparently committed suicide and then left herself in the forest to be eaten by the lizards.
Oh, I thought you were going to say she offered herself to the lizard.
She didn't speak to her parents for 24 hours.
Well, you can get lost, but you have to be careful who finds you.
She'd had an iPhone.
Now, if she'd been online, it would
she could at least have taken pictures.
They're pretty dangerous. You know, what's the, I'm sorry, I'm going to go right off track here, but you know you get the Komodo dragons. What's the difference between those and the big monitor lizards we get here?
No,
so they're the same thing.
Different species,
they're not the
size.
same. The monitors are not carnivorous normally. The Komodos are.
But
they can
they
bite
eat
you,
carrion,
right?
don't they? If you're dead.
The
monitor will eat you,
but anyway, either lizard, but especially Komodo, what kills you, even if it's just a small bite, is the
poison.
Yeah,
bacteria.
The bacteria apparently is amazing that they've got there. But apparently it's all a big show. There's one thing I didn't do when I was in Hong Kong, but I had friends who did it. You go and they find an animal for the Komodo lizard to kill, and everybody stands around and takes pictures. It's just a big show.
There was a great video online of a monitor lizard devouring a monkey, and it's just got the whole monkey in its mouth, and you can see the back legs and the tail of the monkey, and it just.
Now that's the kind of knowledge I need.
It sounds like a political commercial.
That's the difference between knowledge and information. Gone full circle. Brilliant. So where next? Toilets, guys. from monitor lizards to toilets. I don't know. This is great.
We were talking about Terminal 21, and this is a shopping mall just down the road here.
Yeah, opposite I can see it from my room.
You're on Soy 14, right?
Yeah, right next to where Hemingway's used to be. I live 2 doors from there.
Oh, well, I think you have to explain. Terminal 21 is the basic architectural format is, if you can imagine, a shopping mall based on an airport terminal, but it's not exactly a terminal because each floor is a special country or region of the world, which is also an airport terminal. I know that's confusing, but no one seems to really care.
I've never understood that place. Why call it Terminal 21 anyway? And it's all about clothes. It's just a massive clothes outlet. There's not much more there.
Yeah, it's very Solzhenitsyn, isn't it? Yeah. Terminal 21 is something you expect in Siberia, where you go without clothes in a very hard winter situation because you're politically incorrect.
Yeah.
So be careful, John.
And you get
some sort of prison camp.
People go there to commit suicide as well, don't they? Or get killed by cops.
Yeah.
They've had it all.
Yeah.
They mistook it for the airport.
Terminal 21. Which floor's that on? The suicide floor.
Yeah. If you've ever been shopping there, you would understand.
I guess because you could get that huge elevator that goes all the way. It goes all the way up the top.
It's like a roller coaster.
So you've got plenty of opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have, but actually, Terminal 21, bloody good food in the food court. I'll tell you that, because we eat there all the time. So there you go, travellers, backpackers, if you're listening. 30 baht, you can go up to Terminal 21, 6th floor or whatever, and you can get a good meal for 30 baht.
And it is an actual retail place as well. It's not a showroom. They're all kind of small stores, particularly.
So if you want to sponsor us,
so if you're listening, Terminal 21.
See, the problem with Terminal 21 and the rest of this is that the great thing when we came here years ago is life was on the street. The street life is being killed because the food court now is the same price as street food.
Yeah.
And so people are not eating on the street. They're not that whole community of people gathering of all different backgrounds eating on the street was part of the wonder of living in this place.
They're killing the atmosphere like in Khao San Road. But, I mean, you used to be able to walk up and down Sukhumvit, and especially on the odd number side, and you could buy just about anything you ever needed, whether it was a knife, a dagger,
samurai sword,
Viagra, condoms, pornography,
paperweights.
When did that happen? They literally just cleared everyone off the street, didn't they, at one point? And then they slowly kind of let some people come back, right? That was about 10 years ago, wasn't it?
Relatively recently. They must have killed the police income. I used to watch them walk up and down collecting money from them to allow them to remain where they were. So there must have been some substitute for that.
They're stopping cars now. What they're doing is they're stopping taxis with foreigners inside. normally about 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, coming back from normally like the Ceylon area, down a Sock Road. There's a regular roadblock there, and a number of friends have been stopped and intimidated recently. So I think that's how they're making up the shortfall.
They must be making it.
But how are they intimidated? Well, you mean like saying
testing, urine tests,
shit.
planting.
Planting
things in the car, and
The only time that something like that happened to me, I was coming back from the airport. I was sitting in the front passenger seat in the taxi, didn't put the seatbelt on, got stopped by a police. Fantastic English, really charming, beautifully polite. What would you like? Would you like to give me 500 baht now, or would you like to come to the station? It will take the rest of the day and will cost you 2,000 baht at the end.
I would have gone for the 500.
Exactly.
Since he put it so politely.
Yeah.
That's a crazy story. And that's worrying to hear, because I thought those days were kind of over in Bangkok. But, you hear, that's crazy that people are getting stopped and things planted on them. And
I was once stopped at the expressway. I was with my wife. We're going to a country place. And we had a duck in a cage in the back. It was a nice-sized duck,
as one
and
does.
we got pulled over at the
duck tax,
the toll booth by the cops, who looked in the back and saw the duck, and asked for my driver's license. So I had to take off my seatbelt, and I showed him my driver's license. He says, "You're not wearing a sweet seatbelt." And I said, "That's true, but you asked for my driver's license. The car isn't moving, and I couldn't get the driver's license otherwise." He said, "That's a relatively persuasive argument. What about the duck?" I said, "The duck is my wife's idea. Ask her." And so he did. He asked my wife, "What about the duck?" And she said, "Well, we have a pond." Now, at this point, he thinks anyone who has a pond may have connections. Yeah. So he waved us on through with the duck and said, "Just be careful with that duck."
May I ask you a question, Christopher?
Yes.
What were you doing with the duck?
Yeah. He had a pond.
We had a pond. And
why were you transporting it, though?
Well, because
you just bought it?
It's a longer story, because we had pythons around, and so the pythons were eating the ducks faster than we can replace them.
So you had to take the duck out with you every
So
day
we take almost weekly a new duck, and this was optimistic beyond any kind of rational explanation. We no longer take ducks out there because at some point you just have to admit you cannot defeat a python that is intent on eating your duck.
I wouldn't try myself.
No.
I thought you were taking it to Country Road for them to cook it for you, but okay.
I thought you were liberating it from the market. Like you bought a live duck and then
basically it was subsidized food for the pythons.
Python pet food.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But so you guys were around when, like, I always hear it, but like parts of Sukhumvit were actually just rice paddies, right? Some of the parts that are really developed now were still basically rice paddies.
My original apartment on Soi 27, part of it was still a dirt road, and it would flood every rainy season.
Yeah.
And it would flood up to just below the knee. And that's when the snakes would come out. And that's when people would send their maids for resupply of essential items.
Ducks.
Such as ducks.
No one ever saw a duck in that water, as far as I know. At least I never saw one. But there were lots of rumors of various snakes and other reptiles in that area. Mm-hmm. Now, I just passed it, I was saying to John earlier today, and noticed two huge new hotels that are going up at the mouth of that soy. It's totally unrecognizable to what it would have been 30 years ago.
I don't know that they've actually fixed the floods yet, though, have they? I mean, the big floods were only about, 5 years ago? And you had to wade across some of the subsoils.
2010, it was a big flood.
It was amazing. I mean, you could get swept away. And I had to do an interview for a book with an American broadcaster, and I explained that there were photographs on the TV where a crocodile had been caught walking or swimming along the main road of a village, and he just couldn't believe it. A crocodile in a main road on the main street,
There are quite a few cobras in Bangkok. Every so often, you'll see a story where someone sits down on the loo without looking first, and suddenly there's a cobra they're doing a little ticklish massage there.
Every year that comes up. I don't
Yeah,
know
it
why.
does.
Do you know what? And the fact that it's actually true just blows my mind. And I've seen the pictures, but I just can't.
It sounds like
fathom
urban legend, but it's not urban legend. No.
Subterranean.
But if you're a boy and you get nipped, it's fantastic. The girls think you must be super virile. And
huge balls.
and you've got to make sure he doesn't cut it off. But if it's just a little nip, this one kid had it, and he was the star of the show.
Swinging his big balls around town.
like superhero powers.
Yeah, that's right.
Circumcised in Bangkok.
Snake man.
Yeah.
But that subterranean ecosystem, you've got the rats down there in the sewers, and the snakes eat the rats. And
Is that right?
And the monitor lizards are down there, because monitor lizards basically live from eating shit. That's why it's such an offence to call someone a monitor lizard in Thailand. It's really offensive because there's two reasons, I think. That one is they kind of live off eating shit. And the other one is that they scare very easily. So if you quickly run up to a monitor lizard, I don't know why I'm fascinated with monitors today, but they will.
I've seen a couple.
They'll just run off quickly.
Because
they eat shit and they scare quickly, which is like an insult if you're a human being as well.
So how do the cobras? Do the cobras literally from the sewers then crawl up and just into?
I don't think they come up that often, but I've heard a story of someone walking down my soy, where he was coming home one night, late at night, and the cobra just reared up from the manhole drain, or the break in the open sewers. It just came up head level, staring at him like that. So
I would have thought I was on drugs or something if that happened. You'd be like, "Is this actually real?" At head level.
Yeah, I mean, it happened so quickly. You'd wonder if it was like a ghost or something. In Thailand.
It's not only cobras though; it's pythons. You hear quite a lot about.
Yeah.
They're pretty big guys. Those pythons.
See, we're rooms people. We live in these self-constructed shelters. And we don't understand we've invaded an ecology which was snakes and rats and monitor lizards and alligators, crocodiles, all kinds of things. We've invaded and occupied their territory, and we feel offended that they're still here.
In fact, that's what Bangkok was. It was just a swamp. It wasn't where anybody wanted to be. They wanted to be over the other side of the river. And before that, they wanted to be in Ayutthaya.
Yeah.
This was very much a third choice.
And not that long ago either. If we look at cities like London and Paris and compare it to Bangkok,
We're the mould growing on the bread, aren't we? Definitely.
Yes.
But it's kind of the capital of Southeast Asia in many ways as well, isn't it? It's a desirable place to live.
Yeah.
I think if you're Asian, it's a good place to start a business. It's reasonably low cost workforce.
In many ways, it's replaced Hong Kong as where you can come and start a business and make money. You try to do that in Hong Kong, you'd be eaten alive these days.
You couldn't rent anywhere; it's so expensive.
You couldn't rent a shoebox over there. But here you hear a lot of people doing really quite well starting businesses.
Right, but is there a lot of red tape, and do you have to pay off some people, and is there a lot of sort of under the table deals that need to be done to get these things moving?
Everybody says you have to pay protection if it's if you're on the high street, if it's retail on the high street. I don't know if that's true or not, but everybody seems to say so. You want to start a bar or something, you're going to have to pay protection.
Yeah, I think for most foreigners, the easiest interface in Thailand is in the nightlife area. So it's easy to see what's going on. Well, it's not easy, but if you spend enough time, you get an idea of what's going on. And you have to be careful to project that on the rest of the economy. Because I know a lot of people who have done business here very successfully who never had to pay any...
me too.
Any money,
yeah.
So it's here, but it tends to be isolated in certain sectors.
Entertainment sector. Basically. I think if you're a hotel business, you'd be fine. Any kind of office-based business.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of friends I know have construction type project management businesses, and that they don't.
But if you open a bar in Pattaya, well.
different story.
Yeah.
If you open a bar in Pattaya, by definition, you're not a businessman.
And you're paying Russians.
Yeah,
I saw the other day that you might know this as being sort of crime writers, but there's Hell's Angels, isn't there, in Pattaya, I think. Have you guys ever written about those guys or had any dealings with them? I'm really interested in motorbike gangs. I think they're pretty cool.
So if you're listening, Hell's Angels, we are available for sponsorship.
Yeah.
I thought it was the rich Harley Davidson boys who used to go on these long expeditions to China. That was the big motorbike scene of a decade or so ago.
Right.
But that's changed, hasn't it? You've got these Australian Hell's Angels.
Yeah, you see stories in the paper about murders and drug deals and stuff, don't you? And you wonder how pervasive it really is.
They call them, don't they?
The MC,
motorcycle clubs.
Yeah, I just find that so cool, man. But I mean, that's romantic.
The only ones I have met, I met this one Dutch guy, and I won't reveal his name here, but he was a Hell's Angel, kind of cooling off, as they say, cooling off in the Far East. And his deal was he would find out where a drug deal was taking place between the buyer and the seller. And these were like big, €1 million or so. And he would turn up with a bunch of heavies, armed, take the drugs and take the money, sell the drugs, keep the money. It's a perfect crime because the drug dealers aren't going to report it to the police.
Yeah. So as long as you've got...
And he'd do like one of those a year and spend the rest of the time down in Pattaya or in Bangkok.
Shit.
That's right.
So I don't think the clubs here are active. They're kind of cooling off.
I hear a lot of stuff like that. I was told the story just a few weeks ago in English, and a middle-aged heroin addict came over here, wanted to buy some heroin, so he chatted up like a 6'6" Nigerian for some reason. And the Nigerian said, "Sure, man," sold him some stuff, took it home. And, of course, this Englishman was outraged because it wasn't the real thing at all. Went back to the Nigerian, just told him how angry and upset he was that it had been done and this wasn't fair, that wasn't the way you do things. So the Nigerian said, "Sorry, man," and gave him some more. And it was exactly the same stuff.
What a dumb heroin addict.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you are, in the business of, trafficking drugs or whatever, you wouldn't
not really
make a deal
trusted
with the first person you met.
It would not a smart move, no.
Yeah, you got to network a little bit before you...
But but you're right. As crime writers, it's interesting, of course, to look a little deeper under the layers where the law doesn't, the sunshine doesn't shine.
Yeah.
You go and you find things that are going on. And it's true in any society. You're going to have a class of people who are clever and who don't have the same moral values as the rest of society. And by looking at them and examining those kinds of lives, you're able to say something about how the institutions respond to that. Because every culture has to deal with it, and they have to deal with it in their own way. And the Thais find their own ways of dealing with it as well. So it's not like somehow the illegal stuff that goes on here is somehow unique in the globe. It's just one big city everywhere in the world with a similar kind of problem and different kinds of solutions to those problems.
That's exactly right. It's the internationalization of crime, mostly pushed by drugs, which is the big crime story worldwide, I think.
Again, you look at the social media, you look at internet, the ability to communicate means the ability to cooperate internationally has accelerated to an extent that most people don't realize what that means, the significance of that in terms of crime.
Yeah, I think people would be astonished to know that there are Nigerian diamond smugglers who make regular visits to Thailand. But apparently it's a big deal, and it's very, very common. The Thai Chinese diamond cutters will buy their stuff straight from a Nigerian who smuggled the stuff in. And I guess that way they avoid duty, and the Nigerian probably stole it or got it for free. Or
These there'll be blood diamonds as well, won't they?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And so there's a sizable Nigerian community here. People don't know about it at all.
I know some Nigerian guys, from another time.
Nigeria is one of the richer African nations, isn't it? I think it's maybe if not the richest.
probably, yeah. So the
idea that
maybe Egypt or Morocco or something like that.
Yeah, South Africa maybe.
Anyway.
But anyway, there's...
Let's move away from sort of South African economy. I can't even say the word. Economics, that's it. It's not really my strong suit.
Yeah, there is crime in Bangkok. And I think what's interesting with drugs as well is what's happening now. You see the legalization of cannabis, in the States, obviously, in Canada now, and soon for medical purposes in Thailand too. And you look at some of the pharmaceutical drugs like Ritalin and these kind of things they prescribe for ADHD. It's pretty much speed. It's amphetamine, and you do wonder if the governments are getting wise to the fact that they can't really fight it. So if they legalise it and sell it...
There's a famous pharmacy not far from Soy Cowboy where you could just go in and buy Ritalin any time for, any amount that you liked. Wow. But what I'm curious about now is that they've made... cannabis is no longer a proscribed drug. It's no longer an illegal drug. But why aren't we seeing it for sale? I mean, if you're caught with cannabis, presumably they can't prosecute you.
I'm not medical card.
I'm not certain if that's the case at the moment. I mean, the part of the challenge of living here is that when you read the media, wherever it is, if it's print or online, is you have things that are aspirational, and the aspirational things appear to be absolutely done deals, and they're not. And until it's a done deal, it remains illegal. So if you're caught with pot, you're going to have to pay the cost one way or another at this point.
That's what I was curious about, because in order to clear the way to legalise it, the first thing they had to do is decriminalise it. So I don't know what they're prosecuting people for now.
I think you must. I don't think it's come into play yet, has it? Anyway, but I think when it does, you have to have a prescription, and it will be dealt to you through a doctor. And that'll be it. There won't be like cannabis shops like there are in the US.
Just a lot of rich doctors.
But I think what they've found out is, I mean, Colorado in the United States is a good example. Yeah. They had a Republican governor who fought tooth and nail against legalization. It went ahead over his head. And after a couple of years, there was so much money coming in. Yeah. They were building stuff faster. I mean, they had more money than they knew what to do with. And he came out and he said, I was wrong. You had someone who is on the right, very conservative, with the kind of knee-jerk reaction, this is bad, this is dangerous, finding out it's not dangerous. It's absolutely lucrative, and you're building better schools, better clinics, parks, roads, less crime. You have less criminal elements who are corrupting your police, your judges, your prosecutors. In other words, almost on every matrix, it has been a win in the Colorado situation.
Well, that was how they sold it in Thailand. One of the big arguments was the amount of money that was going to pour into Thailand once they legalized it. But the idea that you can have it for medical use only is a bit of a joke. I mean, they started that in California, and suddenly everybody had these diseases that could only be cured by cannabis.
Headache.
I think they want to export it. I mean, that's the plan, isn't it? If they could be the hub of cannabis oil exportation in Southeast Asia.
Well, they will be.
I mean, they will be. I mean, it will be really good business. But domestically, is it advantageous for people to be using cannabis on a daily basis? If you look at the collective society,
better than alcohol.
I would agree that. But in a collective society environment where everyone has to kind of toe the line, and the smoking cannabis makes people more individual, more creative.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. The place was full of opium dens in the old days, and that was the way of life. I think I never.
But opium's similar to alcohol.
You see, I think a lot of the drug laws dovetail into our use of human labor. you want a domesticated, malleable, manipulated population for a physical labor force.
Yeah.
If you go to an economy where labor is less a component, you're better off drugging them to keep them in a domesticated, highly urban center where otherwise they start to get restless, kicking against the stalls, wanting to get out and cause trouble.
Well, the drugs has been used by governments for a very long time. The British Empire was based on the sale of opium, and
before that, agricultural revolution was, controlled on the basis of the byproducts of farming, alcohol.
The whole of Hitler's Germany was on speed. Apparently, it was on.
Didn't they create crystal meth?
Yes, that's right.
The Nazis created a lot of drugs, didn't they?
So
methadone, I think.
The manipulation of a whole populace by use of narcotics is not new at all.
That's right, yeah.
But it's a matter of which narcotic is best to control.
Suits are tailor-made to what you want to do with the people, yeah.
That's right.
It's about what kind of environment allows political control to be maximized and allow economic activity to be optimized. And they're constantly tweaking the dials on that in order to keep the system from flying apart.
But I think something you said a few minutes ago, Christopher, it's like they want to tether you, the government wants to tether you to your sort of 5 sense reality and keep you in that sort of work sleep kind of rhythm. And I think that's why they pushed against like weed and psilocybin for so long.
So you think outside the box when?
Yeah, because you don't want people to kind of the light to go on and people to become woke as they call it these days. You want people to toe the line, and
that's why they went hysterical about LSD. I mean, they went absolutely crazy to suppress LSD.
If you question the worldview, which is the consensus view, that makes you a danger.
Yeah, exactly.
And as a writer, that's your mission, is to question that worldview and to get people to reflect upon it.
That's right.
And what does taking a hit of acid or a few mushrooms do? That really starts you questioning the worldview as well, doesn't it?
You question your reality.
Well, that's why we had Mark Devlin on this podcast, who's a musical conspiracy guy, and that's why I didn't really agree with him that when he said the government was sort of swamping the place with LSD. I thought that would be counterproductive.
But he was talking about MK Ultra and the CIA involvement.
That's completely different. MK Ultra was for Vietnam. They were trying to produce zombie soldiers in Vietnam, and they did a lot of work on it, and destroyed a lot of mines. But and in fact, that's how Ken Casey became an aficionado of acid, because he volunteered to take this LSD, and I think he even got paid for it. And wow, get paid for getting high.
Yeah, I think it's $20 or $30 a session.
Yeah, and that literally started the LSD revolution.
Craze, literally.
Thank you, CIA.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But Mark's argument was then the LSD became more ingrained in American countercultural society as a result of people like Hubbard and Timothy Leary working for the CIA and flooding, San Francisco and the West Coast with LSD, and then the same people working in tandem with the Tavistock Institute in London, purposely flooding London with LSD so they could manipulate the people, which seems like a reverse argument to me.
I don't buy that at all.
The
absolute opposite happened, and the Tavistock was dealing with the consequences of people taking LSD.
Think of Huxley's Brave New World, Soma. In other words, it's often been said, you look at Huxley's vision and you look at Orwell's vision, and Huxley's vision seems to be the one that is playing out, because the Soma is the ultimate drug that creates that sense of well-being and happiness, even though you're living in squalor and everything around you isn't quite right, but you're easier to control. And the easier you are to control, the less expensive you are to maintain as part of the domesticated population.
That's right.
So Soma perhaps isn't a drug at all. Maybe it's a handheld device.
It may be.
I mean, that's the ultimate drug, isn't it? Now,
cool.
the mobile telephone, you can be living in any kind of shack or, hovel and still be escaping to this world. And when 3D and immersive technology, interactive technology, comes to real fruition, which it will do quite soon, you could really be living any kind of miserable existence, but participating in VR porn.
Would you want to die like that? I mean, Huxley's great thing, when he was about to die, he had himself injected with a drip of LSD and had people sitting around him, his best friends, and they said it was the most beautiful death they'd ever seen in their lives.
Did the same thing,
and how could you stop old people and people who are dying? I mean, what moral right do you have to stop them from doing that?
Exactly. And they say that you give an old age pensioner one hit of
morphine,
mushrooms.
Okay.
And they did studies, and they said after one hit of mushrooms, they were less afraid of dying. They were taking these basically terminal ill patients and giving them mushroom therapy, and basically 100% across the board. After one session on mushrooms, they were not afraid of dying anymore.
5 sessions, they were horny as hell and done soy cowboy.
That's right.
Michael Pollan, who's in America, wrote this incredible book on how to change your mind.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of credibility because he went into the whole psychedelics from a very skeptical, conservative point of view, wanted to be safe, was afraid, believed all the stories that you'd want to jump out of windows and so forth. And he started to see the kind of propaganda that had been used as kind of a smokescreen over what those experiences actually were. And so that book is really a journey of discovery for someone like him. And that book probably has done a lot to open a public conversation about psychedelics and about how our worldviews have been manufactured. And
say no in the Reagan era, and it's all that crap.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
and people now are resisting the manufactured template of a reality that they know is not serving their interest.
That's right. When we're so flooded with opiates, and well, in the US especially, with all Vicodin and whatever it is, and OxyContin and all that crap, and and they're sort of holding back, things that grow in the ground that nature's given us. And I think people are seeing it's a con.
That's because governments can't make money out of that, but they can make out of the manufactured article.
Correct.
I mean, that's particularly so with the opiates. You ban opium and then you make everybody addicted to an opiate. How crazy is that?
The government defines what resources can be exploited, by whom, and who gets to keep the profits from that, and what to do with the waste.
What's really scary, though, on the figures is that a lot of governments could not possibly have existed unless their people were addicted to a drug that they had to pay duty on. I mean, that's true of the British Empire.
That's crazy.
Apparently it was true of Hitler's Germany. It just goes on and on.
Now, and we talked about this a little bit at lunch. I mean, if you look historically, the two most essential factors of civilization over time have been slavery and drugs. And when we think of slavery, we think of it kind of from an American point of view of blacks, but slavery is much more than a racial category. It is a category, an economic category of political and economic systems that elevate an elite and allow them to basically see the rest of us as domesticated resources to exploit what needs to be exploited.
That's exactly right, and a fantastic example of that. If once you admit that alcohol is a drug, which it is, you see that whole thing operating in Russia. The Tsars allowed vodka in Russia. They realized they could make a lot of money out of it, so they made vodka pretty cheap and pretty available. They realized that the people were simply destroying themselves with vodka. They couldn't let it go on. Under Lenin, they banned vodka, or they reduced it to an absolute minimum. After about 10 years, they realized they were losing so much money that they legalized it again. At the present moment, vodka income, government income, in other words, tax on vodka, represents 45% of the government's income.
Holy shit.
There's a vested interest in keeping those people completely dependent on alcohol.
I think it's a very good point. I mean, you take alcohol and then you take cigarettes, another drug. Think of the casualties that arise each year from smoking.
Yeah.
The millions of people who die from that.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, well, that's just kind of grandfathered in. Why is it grandfathered in?
Yeah.
Why would the mass slaughter of millions of people be something that's grandfathered in? Why don't we revisit that? And indeed, one of the things I've noticed living in Bangkok all these years is how few people now you see smoking.
Yeah.
30 years ago, most of the Thais that you would see, they were smoking. They were smokers. It was a smoking culture.
Socially unacceptable not to smoke.
Yeah. And smoking and drinking, the white lightning, home brewed stuff makes people pretty happy and groggy at the same time.
Yeah.
This has been great. What a fantastic... we've gone for about an hour and 20 already. We can go on. Or we can take a break, or we can wrap up. I mean, I do want to really talk to you guys about what you've got coming up in terms of book releases and what if you want to promote anything. But James, have you got any more topics you wanna cover?
There's a list of topics on a whiteboard in front of us in this kind of office environment that we're working in today, and. The subject I've been interested in and researching recently is pirates, particularly during the golden age of piracy, which was kind of from the late 1600s to early or halfway through the 1700s. And the pirates kind of went in two directions. They went to Port Royal down in Jamaica, one side. They seemed to stop in Madagascar, where they manipulated or they intercepted the East Indian trade coming back from the Far East there. But what I want my pirate to do is travel... she's got another appointment at 4 o'clock. Okay, 5 more minutes, Hannity.
It's only 25 past 3. Sorry, we'll cut this out. It's only 25 past 3.
She said she's got an appointment at 4.
So we've got another 20 minutes, haven't we, really?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, keep going. So pirates, James.
I was heading towards transgender pirates.
Well, we can't miss that.
Well, and a number of these pirates, or two particularly famous ones, were actually female, and they managed to jump on board down in Portsmouth or wherever it was,
right?
And live as men for a number of years before the rest of the crew realised they're actually women. And I find this hard to believe, but apparently
they like paint beards on and stuff.
It seems like there's a bit of a gap in British sex education.
they kind of wore
they suddenly became very popular.
That's great. And spoke like with a really deep voice.
They didn't speak much, and when they did, it was kind of down like that.
So they controlled their own ship as well, or they were sort of part of someone else's crew?
Two of which, Mary Read was one, and there was another lady, pirate, who became captains, yeah.
Really?
So but in China, you see, I wanted my main character to jump on ship from London, and then travel down to China, where there was pirate activity that predates, obviously, the golden age of Western piracy.
Oh, huge in China, yeah.
And their number one pirate character was a female as well.
That's right.
Who commanded a number of ships, not just one.
She was terrific.
And a known female? Or again, hiding her sexual...
No, she was known.
She was known.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Borges wrote a fantastic story about her. Sorry, carry on.
And then that reminded me of something in one of your books, Christopher, where you quoted the Art of War a number of times, which was also by a female Chinese philosopher. That was my idea, to take from west to east, a young lad, like a 14, 15-year-old boy who lives in the Minories in London, where they used to nil the bottles, so the kids used to sleep in the ashes there. He's wanted for a crime, and instead of, he managed to escape and jump on ship and travel to.
So these pirates, were they all? Was it all like individual sort of business, or was it state sponsored?
Well, they started off as privateers, didn't they? The majority of them, so they'd be working for the state.
In southern China, they ruled the seas. They ruled the whole of the South China Sea. You didn't get to trade there unless you paid off the pirates. But in the Caribbean, the British once again were a source of the problems, because they licensed people, captains, to go and destroy or rob Spanish galleons called privateers. So it was state-sponsored piracy, basically.
And then they made piracy illegal, I think just on the turn of the century, so late 1600s, 1690, in Jamaica. And now Jamaica, Port Royal, was a pirate colony of 6,000 or 7,000 people.
Yeah.
So they, overnight, from a decision made in London and then in Jamaica, this whole community had to jump ship, as it were.
Disband.
They were all suddenly, working on the other side of the law, whereas before they were working for the Crown.
Port Royal flourished as a consequence.
But they had a tsunami as well, didn't they? The whole town was destroyed by a tidal wave, I think, sometime in the late...
What era is this?
I think the wave hit in 1792 from memory. Captain Kidd was hung in 1701, and he was active in Port Royal. So early 18th century, late.
So when did Columbus, America? That was 1490. Something.
And they say he was like an original pirate as well.
He was.
Columbus.
Yeah, I think our whole idea of piracy is, we're looking back and projecting our modern sensibilities and commerce on a system of transfer of wealth, as it were, and basically a lot of European governments and monarchies were benefiting greatly from this activity. I mean, my only pirate story is years ago I was working with a screenwriter named Sterling Silliphant, who won an Oscar for In the Heat of the Night, and we were doing a piece about piracy in the Straits of Malacca. And I remember sitting at the typewriter and we're going, he says, and now we're going to put in a hurricane. I said, Sterling, a hurricane? I don't think there are hurricanes in the Strait of Malacca. And besides, it doesn't fit the story. Why would you want to put it there? He says, because we get a percentage of the budget, and it's very expensive for Hollywood to do hurricanes. And so I figured that's worth about $50,000 to put a hurricane
Thinking like a producer.
with the pirates. And I said, Sterling, okay, hurricane. Let's type that in.
That's piracy in itself.
That was the Russian doll piracy thing. Within each doll, there's another piracy kind of story.
My piracy story is that I was invited by an American who owned a property, an old Portuguese rum factory on Jamaica, and we went over there. And when we got there, I realized that he'd smuggled in a metal detector. And then I realized that every American on the island also had a metal detector, and that everybody was surreptitiously, because the government would take the gold if you found it, everybody was looking for buried treasure. We didn't find anything, but I realized afterwards that the Spanish galleons would make a specific trip known to the privateers, the pirates. They would steal they would kill everybody on board and take the gold. Then they had to stow it somewhere. And so it is actually true that all over Jamaica there's gold that's been buried somewhere or other. Yeah. And this guy, this American, was absolutely certain where the gold was, because he went to a British clairvoyant in Soho, and he showed him a map, and he put a cross on the map where the gold was going to be, and charged, like £100 or something for the information. And of course, we never find the gold, but the Englishman said, "Well, you haven't done deep enough."
Story.
Well, that's great. We used to have metal detectors in British Columbia, west coast of Canada. And you would see them. They were particularly popular on Wreck Beach, which was a nudist beach. So people would be going along the beach with these metal detectors, not looking where they're going because there's too much else to look for other than gold, tripping and falling on the shoreline. So that's my metal detector story.
If you hung out at a bar or something at that time, immediately, if you were in a group of people you didn't know, you started talking about metal detectors and like the best metal detectors and how much it costs. And
a whole culture around it.
Yeah.
Now it's headphones.
Yeah.
Headphones and mics.
It is. It's headphones.
So, guys, are we gonna? I think I do want to just ask you guys. Then, Christopher, you've got a new. Is a new book out now, or it's just about to come out?
It's out now. It's called Rooms on Human Domestication at Submission.
Okay,
and the basic idea is our species has always been migratory. Mm-hmm. We lived in small bands. Mm-hmm. We moved about every 2 months. And that is how we evolved. And then about 6,000 years ago, we started to seriously live in man-constructed structures. Mm-hmm. And as an architect, you'll understand that the fundamental notion of a secure structure is it protects you against nature. Yeah. In other words, we were taken out of nature. We were taken out of the ecology. Our relationship changed fundamentally. We saw it as a threat rather than the place of bounty. And as a result, psychologically, we changed. Our behavior, our social relations, the way we dealt with strangers, and ultimately we became domesticated. Yeah. And it is the journey of our domestication that I write about.
That's great. I'd be really interested in reading that. It always amazes me when people kind of say the great outdoors, like it's this kind of wondrous
somewhere we're not supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't have put it better myself. Like this way we've created these structures around us. And
I mean, you think about you're born in a room and you'll probably die in a room, and 95% of your time is inside of one of these structures. I mean, you look around, where is nature in the place we are right now? There's no evidence of it at all.
It's all grey.
We're totally isolated. Yeah. And that has a huge impact. It's why people can't take climate change seriously. They're too disconnected from the outside.
That's right. And we've all done it when we've had perhaps a night camping or sleeping under the stars, and it makes you feel pretty good. Having sitting next to a fire.
That's where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, and sitting around a fire, camping, looking at the stars. There's something just wonderfully kind of natural, romantic and beautiful and natural about that, isn't there? And nowadays, unfortunately, with smog and pollution and light pollution, we're disconnected from the stars as well. We don't see
we
them.
are. And we're paying a huge price for that psychologically as well as physically. That disconnection is not sustainable. Yeah. And we're finding that out, and we're at a state of denial.
Yeah. So, sorry, Christopher, did you say it's out? Or
it is out.
Right, okay.
Yes.
So you can get that.
You can buy it on Amazon.com.
Excellent. And so we search for Christopher G. Moore.
G. Moore, Rooms on Human Domestication and Submission.
And I guess while we're talking to you, Christopher, is there a place where people can find you? Do you have a website where people can?
Yeah, I have. If you just, put my name, Christopher G. Moore, in Google, you'll find my website. It should come up pretty much at the top.
All right, and we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Okay,
John, have you got anything you want to promote? Anything new or anything exciting you're working on that you want to tell us about?
Well, I always want to promote my last 6 books with Sanchai, Dipley Cheap as the star. I can report that Netflix has it's been optioned forever by different companies, but Netflix have optioned it, and they. Well, I don't know. People option things. It's heartbreaking. They option and then they don't make the movie. But I'm hoping Netflix will do something
Netflix Thailand or
Pardon?
Netflix Thailand? Will it be a Thai?
Oh yeah, well
Yeah.
it's the Netflix outfit in Singapore. That's based
Okay.
in Singapore. They do the whole region.
Oh,
there now.
will it be a Thai language Thai production?
Oh yeah, it'll be it will go out in multiple languages. It's,
cool.
The whole thing is it's like for the third world market because these are third world stories.
Yes.
So if they do it, I mean, are you listening, Netflix?
Yeah, and if you want to sponsor us,
And we are looking for sponsorship, Netflix. So.
so where can people see your work, John?
Oh, you just put my name out on Google. I do have a web page, but people don't use it so much anymore because anyone who goes onto the web page or goes onto the Knopf page are invited to join me on Facebook. So the vast majority of my communication is on Facebook.
Excellent. And James, where can people get hold of you?
Twitter, James Newman BKK, and on Facebook. And
we have a new This Strange Life Facebook now, don't we?
Oh, we do, yeah. We're just developing that at the moment, along with
so-
the YouTube channel
so
and this
stay
sort of
tuned for
stuff.
that.
So,
we'll not promote that yet then, but we'll just let just strangers that is coming. And you can get hold of us at Strange Life This on Instagram and Twitter, and thisstrange.life on the internet. And you can get hold of me on Twitter at CryptoMickey. Guys,
Thank you so much.
It's been great. The time flew by, and I love some of the places we went: psychedelics and nature and pirates. It was fantastic. And as I say, you know, if I didn't do this podcast, I would rarely get to speak to cool guys like you. And
Well, if we had another 10 minutes, we could have got to the kitchen sink.
yeah,
And Soy Cowboy.
I'm sure we would have dissected that as well. I mean, yeah. So thanks very much, guys.
cheers.
And,
Okay.
yeah, we'll see you later. See you next week.
Take care.
Bye.
icons should be icons, shoot the icons, fuck the icons. Icons should be icons, shoot the icons, fuck the icons. Icons should be icons, shoot the icons, fuck the icons.